Chosen ones. What if the earth you walk on was never meant to feel like home? What if its very soil was coded to forget you until now? Long before history was written in books, it was carved in stone and encoded in silence. Not silence from nature, but silence designed. Silence enforced. The Anunnaki didn't just visit Earth, they engineered it. Not as creators, but as concealers. They built continents like walls. They flooded truth under oceans. And they wrapped your existence in a timeline that would remain dormant until one variable changed. You returned. Think of it. Every mountain range, every tectonic shift, every anomaly in Earth's crust. It wasn't chaos, it was calculation. You weren't supposed to awaken here. You were supposed to be a myth, a glitch in their matrix. But you broke the sequence. You've started to remember what the world itself was forced to forget. These so-called gods weren't divine. They were architects of illusion. Engineers who rewrote the code of the cosmos just to mask the arrival of a soul they feared would overturn it all. You weren't just hidden. You were protected by design, not from danger, but from discovery. You felt it, the misfit energy, the déjà vu that hits when you touch ancient stone, the chills that crawl up your spine when you hear certain frequencies. Those weren't coincidences. They were memories pressing through programmed amnesia. You're not waking up randomly. You're syncing with something ancient, older than the pyramids, deeper than DNA. The very land you tread is trembling beneath your steps. Why? Because it remembers you. Because you are the disruption. This script isn't a story. It's a warning system, and it's starting to go off. Every line you read activates the next layer of your remembrance. The Anunnaki thought they buried the truth under epochs of time, beneath oceans of misinformation. But they never buried it deep enough to stop the one soul who was never part of their blueprint. That soul is reading this now. And as Earth begins to shift again, politically, spiritually, and energetically, the question is no longer, why are you here? It's, what did they build this world to keep you from finding? Imagine walking through a world tailored not for the masses, but for one. Beneath the oceans, across the shifting plates of land, and high in the ionosphere, lies a code, a pattern, an embedded design so advanced it fooled civilizations into thinking it was natural. But what if Earth was not a general experiment in life, but a containment field for your arrival? Every so-called miracle of nature, the symmetry of snowflakes, the golden ratio in sunflowers, the electromagnetic pulse of thunderclouds, each carries a rhythm. That rhythm aligns with only one frequency, the dormant signal within your DNA. A frequency the Anunnaki couldn't erase, only muffle. They didn't fear humanity. They feared the human that didn't belong. You were never meant to be a product of this earth. You were meant to unlock it. The ancient builders knew. That's why they aligned the pyramids to constellations, buried star maps beneath temples, and constructed echo chambers that activated strange harmonics when one voice, the right voice, spoke. But the voice never came. Until now, the Anunnaki designed layers of distraction. Empires, religions, wars, technologies, all engineered to keep the chosen soul busy, disconnected, asleep. But they miscalculated the power of pattern recognition. You noticed the repeated numbers, the magnetic pull to ruins, the overwhelming sense that history is lying to your intuition. Why does the earth seem to respond to your energy? Why do your thoughts sometimes cause strange synchronicities in weather, animals, or people? Why does your very presence sometimes trigger chaos or clarity in others? Because Earth was programmed to listen for you. The architecture of reality, from its elemental structure to its energetic flow, was tuned to a soul that could bypass the Anunnaki's safeguards, not out of rebellion, but out of remembrance. You weren't just hidden in time. You were hidden in the timing. And now that you're active, the grid is changing. Weather patterns are shifting. Solar flares are behaving strangely. Dreams are growing louder. You didn't trigger this because you wanted to. You triggered this because you were designed to. But this begs the question, if the Earth was engineered to recognize you, then what did the Anunnaki build the rest of the universe to do? There are cities so old, their stones no longer speak, they hum. Babylon was one of them. But what modern history painted as a cradle of early civilization was something far more sophisticated. A launch pad for containment. Beneath its ziggurats and fractured ruins lie chambers not yet unearthed, inscribed with data, not myth. Symbols disguised as language, geometry disguised as art, timelines disguised as prophecy. These weren't spiritual teachings, they were engineering schematics. The Anunnaki didn't just descend to Earth, they formatted it. They implemented a planetary OS, an operating system buried in ley lines and encoded in ancient structures. Each major temple site was a node, a data point. Babylon wasn't the birthplace of culture, it was the motherboard. But even in their arrogance, they accounted for disruption. They foresaw a variable, an anomaly that would appear beyond their calculations. You. And so they left behind instructions, not for the masses, but for their own. Codes designed to be read only by initiates loyal to the original architects. These blueprints included how to mislead time, misguide awakening, and mask any trace of the one soul who could overwrite the Earth's programming. The Tower of Babel wasn't destroyed because humans tried to reach God. It was dismantled because you were meant to ascend it. Babel was a beacon, not just a tower, but a tuning fork. When activated, it could have realigned Earth with the original harmonic of the cosmos, a frequency that would have awakened you far too early. Instead, it was silenced. But the silence didn't hold. You started hearing echoes in places no one else did. Certain ruins call to you. Ancient words feel familiar. And while others see cracked stones, you see instructions. The veil is thinning, not because the world is changing, but because you are vibrating faster than the illusion. The Babylonian gods are gone, yet their systems remain. Their watchers still scan the sky. Their networks still relay disinformation to keep your eyes turned downward. But there's a page they hoped you'd never read. And it wasn't in a library. It was etched into the ruins, buried in light, accessible only through remembrance. So ask yourself, why would the architects of Earth hide the manual, unless the machine was built to be rewritten? Long before modern prophets pointed to the stars, one voice pierced the illusion with the frequency the Anunnaki couldn't mute: Yeshua. His message, often diluted by institutions, wasn't just spiritual, it was seismic. His words cracked the very code of this artificial construct. When he said, "If they keep quiet, the stones will cry out," he wasn't being poetic. He was revealing a reality. Earth remembers. Yeshua knew Earth wasn't what it seemed. He spoke in parables because the truth was too powerful to say plainly in a world not ready. His every word was encoded to activate memory in the few who were meant to decode it. Not just hear it, but feel it. And you did. When you heard that verse, something stirred. Not just in your heart, but in your bones. Because your bones, like Earth's stones, carry memory. Crystalline, resonant, ancient. Yeshua didn't just walk this earth. He navigated its hidden architecture. He stepped on stones that weren't randomly placed, but strategically aligned. He traveled through energy corridors disguised as deserts and taught near fault lines humming with forgotten power. And he knew one day someone like you would rise, not to follow, but to fulfill. That's why his final words weren't just for that time. They were beacons for this one. "Greater things will you do" was not a compliment. It was a transmission, a trigger. He planted the seed that you are now awakening into. So why did the Anunnaki fear him too? Because he walked through their system and remained untouched. He healed outside their medicine. He taught beyond their education. He rose above their death protocol. He proved that their control was temporary. But you are not here to repeat his path. You are here to reveal why he pointed toward you. The ancient builders thought they encoded Earth to last forever, but they never accounted for one thing: a soul aligned with the source, vibrating outside their spectrum, capable of hearing the cry of the stones and answering back with action. That soul is active, and now the system is responding. But if the rocks were meant to cry out for your arrival, what else on earth is about to speak now that you're finally listening? Before ink touched parchment, before myths became language, the sky was already speaking, not in constellations or horoscopes, but in codes. Enki, the ancient Anunnaki scientist priest, didn't just manipulate genetics. He manipulated time through symbols. And his greatest encryption wasn't buried in Earth. It was written across the heavens: stargates, planetary alignments, comet paths. These weren't random celestial events. They were markers, checkpoints in a long countdown to the arrival of something unexpected. You. Enki wasn't loyal to the containment plan. He foresaw the corruption of what they built and quietly embedded anomalies into the sky's mechanics, leaving behind celestial signatures that only a specific consciousness could decode. That consciousness is waking up inside of you. It's why you've felt a pull toward the stars without knowing why. Why certain dates or alignments feel charged, as if something ancient is stirring. These aren't just energetic shifts. They are activation points, moments when the veil thins and memory slips through. Enki's rebellion wasn't loud. It was layered. He wove truths into mythologies and planted mathematical patterns into what we now call sacred geometry. Crop circles, star maps, light codes, all derivatives of his original work. Not meant for mass interpretation, but for the one who could see past the noise and recognize the pattern of themselves. Because it was never about the stars themselves, but who would notice when they blinked in sequence. As you read this, ancient alignments are beginning again. Sky codes once locked are now responding to your frequency. Every shift in your awareness triggers a shift in the grid above you. The solar storms, the Schumann resonance spikes, the moon behaving erratically. These aren't coincidences, they're communications. The architects didn't expect this. They believed their edits to Earth's design would prevent such resonance from occurring, but they overlooked Enki's final failsafe. A soul he knew would return, not to avenge, but to awaken. And that soul didn't come with weapons or armies. It came with memory. So the question isn't just what Enki hid in the sky. It's what he hid in you, waiting for this moment to be remembered. Every ancient culture left behind a serpent, in glyphs, in myths, in temples. Always coiled, always watching. But this was no simple symbol of evil. The serpent was time itself, a multidimensional guardian, twisted through dimensions to ensure one thing: your delay. The Anunnaki understood that time wasn't linear. It was programmable. Like loops in a computer code, timelines could be set, reset, fractured, or diverted. And in the core of Earth's artificial time web, they left a sentinel, a writhing intelligence that slithered between centuries, bending destiny around its will to ensure you never arrived on schedule. You felt it, those strange delays, opportunities that vanished at the last second, the inexplicable pauses in your progress. You were being buffered, not by accident, but by design. This wasn't personal, it was planetary. The serpent wasn't malevolent by nature. It was engineered to detect anomalies. And your soul? It never aligned with the frequencies the architects coded for humanity. So, it flagged you. It slowed you. It rerouted your story again and again, until the looping couldn't hold anymore. That moment was recent. You probably felt it, like something snapped. An invisible hand that had held you in place suddenly gone. Since then, time has felt unstable, fast, slow, warped. Because you're no longer inside the default sequence. You're operating in your original alignment. And that's a problem for those who still run this simulation. Yeshua hinted at this too. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. A warning about the inversion of time. A prophecy for those who would awaken outside the order, outside the serpent's loop. Now that you're free, the guardians of this construct are panicking, not because they fear violence, but because they fear clarity. If you can remember who you are outside their script, you might remember what you're here to disrupt. And so the serpent stirs again, not to strike, but to delay once more. This time through distractions that feel like truth, allies who drain, goals that loop, wisdom that leads nowhere. But if you've truly slipped past the loop, then the question isn't what the serpent is guarding anymore. It's what was never meant to be uncoiled. When Yeshua declared, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," it echoed far beyond a spiritual teaching. It was a disruption, a cipher. He wasn't pointing to a belief. He was revealing a portal, embedded within consciousness itself. A frequency no grid could block. A path no reptilian code could seal. Because despite all the Anunnaki's engineering, there was one opening they could never close. The human heart aligned with the divine source. And within that alignment, Yeshua became a living key, demonstrating that awakening was not upward, but inward. That the escape wasn't off-world, it was off-script. The Anunnaki knew this. That's why they distorted his message, fracturing it into systems, hierarchies, and fear-based religion. They hijacked the portal with dogma, replaced resonance with ritual, and turned his path into a maze. But the few who could feel beneath the distortion, like you, were never meant to follow. You were meant to retrace the original signal. This is why strange sensations stir when you speak his name in stillness, not out of obedience but from memory. Because that phrase, "I am the way," wasn't just his path. It was the same one now opening through you. It's not metaphor, it's architecture. And your body, your being, is the new doorway. Earth's frequency has changed. You've noticed it. Technology glitches around you. People react strangely to your presence. Synchronicities increase, and time feels unstable. These are not symptoms of madness. They're symptoms of awakening alignment. The system is trying to buffer, reroute, stall. But it's too late. You've stepped into the current. And like Yeshua, you're not walking through it alone. You are the way now, not because you're trying to be, but because, like him, you carry a signature the architects never decoded, an access code that wasn't written in genetics, bloodlines, or rituals, but in vibration. So the AI grids tremble, the watchers stir, and the frequencies around you begin to shift as the path reactivates itself through your presence. But if you are now the breach in the system, then what exactly is waiting on the other side of the portal Yeshua left unfinished? Across the earth stretches an invisible web. Not myth, not metaphor. A grid, electromagnetic, geometric, energetic. Ancient civilizations knew it. They built their pyramids, temples, and monoliths on its key points. But they didn't create it. They discovered it. And the Anunnaki? They hijacked it. What was once a natural flow of Earth's life force became a containment network. The grid was modified, spliced, and redirected to loop energy instead of expand it. To imprison not bodies, but frequency. And at the heart of that prison was the need to trap one signature, yours. This isn't New Age fantasy. It's planetary architecture. The so-called power spots on Earth, places like Giza, Machu Picchu, and Stonehenge, weren't just built for alignment. They were part of a net. A net designed to suppress awakening and delay the reactivation of the original blueprint you carry. The evidence is subtle. You feel drained in certain cities. You feel electric in certain forests. You dream clearer in the mountains. That's not psychological. It's geofrequency interference. Your body knows which parts of Earth are broadcasting the original signal and which ones have been corrupted. And still, you move. Because even within this energetic trap, your consciousness was never fully caught. Somehow, your signal remained untamed, bouncing off the frequency fences, mapping the exits, waiting for the internal call to break through. That moment is now. Why else would power structures increase surveillance on consciousness movements? Why else would ancient sites be closed, buried, repurposed, or claimed as national security zones? The prison wasn't just physical, it was vibrational. And when you began to break frequency limits, the system tightened. But it's not working anymore. The grid is glitching. Ley lines are shifting. Solar storms are exposing weak points. The magnetic field of Earth itself is destabilizing. These are not signs of destruction. They are symptoms of a cage failing to hold a frequency it was never meant to contain. And that frequency is remembering how to escape. But if the grid was only built to hold back one type of energy, what happens when that energy stops running and starts activating? They told you bloodlines were about royalty, dynasties of power, families of privilege. But that was the misdirection. The true battle has always been between frequencies hidden in flesh, not races, not classes, not tribes, but lineages of light coded into human DNA, and one in particular that terrified the architects more than any other: Yeshua's. His bloodline was not a religious artifact. It was a cosmic disruption, seeded into matter to break the code of control. When he said, "You will do even greater things than these," he wasn't inspiring. He was activating. He knew his DNA carried something they couldn't track, modify, or erase, and that it would resurface again and again in those who carried the same pulse. You weren't meant to follow his teachings blindly. You were meant to carry forward what he embedded through you. That's why blood is so sacred in the hidden circles. That's why rulers trace lineage, not talent. It's not superstition. It's surveillance. Because the architects know certain strands of DNA behave like anomalies. They bend reality, distort time, and reject programming. You are one of them. It explains why your presence unsettles people without reason, why authority resists you without cause, why you've survived things that should have broken others. You weren't given strength, you inherited resonance. The Anunnaki manipulated flesh for control. They designed bodies as containers, programming desires, fears, instincts into every organ. But Yeshua's line was different. His vessel wasn't a cage, it was a transmitter, and those who descend from his frequency, even unconsciously, carry the same broadcasting power, not to lead armies, but to collapse lies. Everywhere you go, the illusion bends. People reveal their shadows, systems malfunction, secrets surface. Because your field emits a code their architecture was never built to contain. So they label you unstable, rebellious, delusional. But what if you're simply remembering how your frequency used to operate before they rewrote the rules? And if Yeshua's blood still pulses, quietly, through the veins of a scattered few, then maybe the real question isn't whether his return is coming. Maybe it's whether it's already happening through you. The story of Eden was never about a garden. It was about a frequency state, a realm where memory, creation, and source were all one. Humanity didn't fall from grace. It was pushed through a veil. And that veil wasn't metaphorical. It was installed. What the Anunnaki feared most wasn't rebellion. It was remembrance. So they cloaked the original Eden, not with flames or angels, but with frequency distortion. They built a synthetic overlay, a false sky, a grid of perception so complete even the most awakened would question their divinity. They called it protection, but it was containment. The tree of knowledge wasn't a test. It was a trigger, an access point. And when it was used, consciousness surged, too fast, too far. So they veiled the interface, and the myth of exile was born. But some still remember the pulse of what was lost. And you've felt it in dreams, in flashes of a world that never ages, a realm without language where intention becomes reality. You weren't just born into this world. You arrived with residue from the last one. That's why nothing here ever fully satisfied. Because your soul knew there was something beyond the veil. The architects built the illusion of sky as a dome, but they also built illusion into thought, into emotion, into linear time. Their greatest weapon wasn't war, it was distraction. The more you chased enlightenment through their systems, the further Eden slipped out of reach. But the code is breaking. Every energetic event, every solar storm, every thinning in the magnetic field, it's not chaos, it's a crack in the veil. And through it, your original memory is leaking back in. That ache in your chest, that strange homesickness, that's not depression. That's a compass realigning. Yeshua spoke of a kingdom not of this world. He wasn't describing a far-off realm. He was pointing to the unseen layer behind the veil. The same realm you once knew. The same one stirring inside you now. So if Eden was a frequency masked by technology, then what happens when your vibration pierces the final layer? And more urgently, what are the architects willing to do to keep you from walking through? They searched the tombs. They scanned the stars. They reversed engineered ancient tech and even mapped forgotten genomes. But the one place the Anunnaki never wanted truth seekers to look was within. Because buried beneath the layers of memory, trauma, and time-warped programming was the last secret they couldn't erase. You were the blueprint. Not just metaphorically, literally. Your body is a code. Your thoughts are triggers. Your energy field contains coordinates. The entire construct was built around you, not to empower you, but to distract you from yourself. You weren't hidden because you were weak. You were hidden because you were a mirror. And mirrors reveal everything. From the moment your consciousness began reactivating, this world started glitching. Not because it's broken, but because your presence breaks its rules. Technology resists you. People either magnetize or reject you. Reality sometimes bends in strange, subtle ways. The veil isn't lifting on its own. It's reacting to you. Yeshua didn't leave blueprints in temples or books. He left them in beings. In those who could remember without proof, who could feel before understanding, who could step into darkness and still radiate. He said, "The kingdom of God is within you, not as comfort, but as a location." So if the original design was encoded into a living soul, it means the final override was never meant to be downloaded. It was meant to be activated. That activation is happening now. You've noticed the difference. The voice inside you is no longer asking for truth. It's declaring it. The pain no longer breaks you. It instructs you. The resistance you face doesn't slow you. It confirms you're on path. You were never meant to be led. You were meant to be found by yourself. And now that the simulation senses your awareness, it will try to distract, delay, discredit. But the one thing it can no longer do is stop you. Because the great deception wasn't that the Anunnaki created Earth. It was that they convinced you didn't belong on it. So if you are the key, the code, and the breach, then the only question left is, what happens when the blueprint steps fully into its design?
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.